In the quiet, rolling hills of Carroll County, Georgia, life tends to move at a steady, predictable pace. It's a place about an hour west of Atlanta where tight-knit communities are built around church gatherings and Friday night football games. It was the kind of place where the Brock family fit in perfectly. Kristen, 41, and her husband James, 45, were raising a beautiful, blended family of 7 children under one roof. From the outside looking in, their home on Carrollton Tyus Road was the picture of American life. A cozy, lived-in house full of laughter, love, and the chaotic energy of a large family. They were known by neighbors and friends as genuinely kind people, active in their church, with no known enemies and no obvious drama. They were, by all accounts, just good people living a quiet life. But on the morning of February 20th, 2025, that peace was permanently shattered. A 911 call came into the Carroll County Dispatch, and the voice on the other end was panicked and young. It was the couple's 6-year-old daughter, Sarah Grace Patrick. She told the operator that her little sister had just discovered something unthinkable. Their mom and their stepdad were in their bedroom, and they were completely unresponsive. When the first deputies arrived on the scene, they were met with a profound sense of stillness. The house itself gave no outward sign of the tragedy that had been reported within. As they stepped across the threshold, their training took over. They moved cautiously, their eyes scanning for anything out of the ordinary, anything that could tell the story of what had happened. But the story the house told was a confusing one. The scene inside the master bedroom confirmed the worst. It was immediately clear to the first responders that they were not dealing with a medical emergency, but the aftermath of a devastating incident. Kristen and James Brock were gone. For investigators, every case begins with a search for a narrative, a logical sequence of events. The most common theory in a situation like this is a home invasion gone tragically wrong. But as detectives began their methodical sweep of the property, that theory started to fall apart almost immediately. For starters, there were no signs of a break-in, no shattered windows, no splintered door frames, nothing pried open. The home was secure. Well, almost. One small, strange detail stood out. A single door was found slightly ajar, just barely cracked open. Was it a clue, or was it simply an oversight, a door someone had forgotten to latch? On its own, it wasn't enough to suggest an intruder. Many people, especially in a community that feels safe, might not double-check every lock every night. Even more perplexing was the state of the house itself. The interior was tidy, not in disarray. Nothing looked ransacked. Valuables appeared to be untouched. There wasn't the chaotic, thrown-together mess that usually signals a frantic search for cash or jewelry. It just didn't feel like someone had broken in, committed a terrible act, and then fled. The scene was too calm, too orderly. It lacked the signature of a random, violent intrusion. And then there was the most chilling fact of all. Kristen and James hadn't been alone. Their youngest daughter, a girl reported to be just 5 or 6 years old, was in the house that night. So was Sarah Grace, the teenager who made the call. Both girls told the police the same thing. They hadn't seen or heard a thing. No strange noises, no commotion, no unfamiliar voices. To the seasoned investigators on the scene, this detail was a sticking point. This was a modest family home, not a sprawling estate with soundproofed wings. An event of this magnitude would have created a significant disturbance. Yet, 2 children, sleeping just down the hall, were seemingly unaware that anything had happened until morning. The questions began to pile up, forming an impossible puzzle. If it wasn't a robbery, what was the motive? If there was no forced entry, how did the person responsible get inside? And how could such a profound loss of life occur within the walls of a small family home without a single person hearing it? The pieces just didn't fit. As the sun rose higher over Carroll County that morning, investigators felt a growing certainty. The answer to this mystery wasn't out there somewhere in the wider world. It was hidden somewhere within the four walls of that very house. The search was just beginning. You are correct. My apologies. I misunderstood the instruction. In the immediate aftermath of a tragedy, a family typically turns inward, seeking solace in privacy and leaning on their closest circles for support. The investigation into the deaths of Kristen and James Brock, however, was about to be defined by a very different, very public kind of grieving process. While investigators were meticulously combing through the physical evidence at the home, the case was simultaneously unfolding in a second virtual location, the social media platform TikTok. And at the center of it all was Sarah Grace. In the days and weeks following the incident, Sarah took to the platform and began to post, creating a digital diary of a teenager navigating an unimaginable loss. To her rapidly growing audience, the videos were raw and emotional. One particularly poignant and widely shared video featured her mother, with a caption that laid out a heartbreaking premonition.
To know it, but a year from now our family will be torn apart, and I will move far away and won't see or talk to him for 5 years.
Birthday to you. Birthday to you.
To the thousands of strangers who saw this on their For You pages, this was the authentic voice of a daughter's grief. It felt as though the TikTok community had become her confidants, a place where she could look for some measure of comfort from the anonymity of the online world. But Sarah's activity went far beyond personal expression. She began an active campaign to bring attention to her parents' case, and this campaign took a surprising turn when she started reaching out to major TikTok creators, people with massive followings who specialized in true crime and investigative content. One prominent creator later shared the direct messages she sent them, illustrating just how proactive she was.
Y'all, this is Sarah Grace, and she messaged me back on June 3rd and just said, search up Brock case. So I said, Brock Turner? Brock who? She said, Kristen and James Brock. Hold on. They're my parents, and out of nowhere, a random Thursday night in February, someone came in my house with me and my 5-year-old sister, and my parents left them for me and my little sister to wake up to. Technically, it was a Wednesday night because I found them Thursday morning. I am so sorry. I cannot imagine. I will absolutely research and cover their case. Please take care of you always.
This is where a critical split in perception began to form. To the online world, Sarah Grace was a victim fighting for answers. Her outreach was seen as a brave attempt to keep the case from going cold. But to the investigators who were already wrestling with the inconsistencies of that first morning, this behavior was a significant red flag. In any major investigation, the behavior of those closest to the victims is scrutinized. In the 21st century, that scrutiny now includes a person's digital footprint. For law enforcement, Sarah's prolific online presence was both unusual and deeply informative. While most people would retreat, she was moving toward the spotlight. While most would be overwhelmed in private, she was curating a public narrative. Detectives were no longer just looking at a crime scene, they were analyzing a performance. The question they had to ask was a difficult one. Was this the authentic cry for help from a traumatized daughter? Or was it an elaborate and calculated effort to control a story? As her online following grew, so did the file on the investigators' desks. The digital vigil she was holding for the world to see was ensuring that everyone was watching her, and that included the very people tasked with finding the truth. While Sarah Grace's TikTok campaign was capturing the attention of the public, investigators in Carroll County were focused on a much quieter, more methodical task. They were re-examining the foundational evidence of the case, the initial statements, the crime scene analysis, and the confounding lack of a logical explanation. The digital persona Sarah was projecting online, that of a desperate, grieving daughter, was one piece of the puzzle. But it was her real-world statements and behaviors that were beginning to present a series of troubling contradictions. The first major inconsistency stemmed from that very first morning. Sarah had been adamant that she heard nothing, a claim that was already difficult for investigators to accept given the modest size of the family home. But then, a new piece of information emerged that made her story even more perplexing. According to a close family friend who spoke with a news outlet, Sarah had told her something very specific. While she claimed not to have heard the chaotic events that took her parents' lives, she did claim to have heard a much subtler sound. The quiet, mechanical hum of her stepfather James's LVAD machine suddenly stopping. For investigators, this was a logical impossibility. An LVAD is a device that assists a weakened heart, and it emits a constant, low-level humming sound. To hear that specific, quiet machine power down, but not the much louder, more violent disturbance that would have caused it to stop, it simply didn't add up. It was a detail that defied common sense. This contradiction wasn't just a minor inconsistency. It was a fundamental crack in the narrative she had provided. It suggested that she was aware of what was happening in that room on a much more detailed level than she was admitting. The investigation was at a critical juncture. They had a perplexing crime scene and a witness whose story was beginning to fray at the edges. The next major turning point would come not from an interrogation room or a forensics lab, but from a place of public mourning, the funeral. For the family and community, it was a day to grieve two beloved people. For investigators, it was also a chance to observe to see if anyone's behavior stood out. And when Sarah Grace stepped up to the pulpit to deliver her parents' eulogy, everyone listened. What they heard was not a simple, heartfelt tribute. It was a rambling, disjointed, and deeply strange speech that would become a pivotal piece of evidence in their case.
For those of you who do not know me, my name is Sarah, and I'm Kristen Brock's daughter and James Brock's stepdaughter. This isn't easy, like, oh, my family had to do this all the time. I'm really happy I get to do this, but just bear with me because I stutter a lot. I just wanted to say goodbye to my mom and Jamie since we never got the chance to. I was so used to you guys always being here to the point that I never once thought to imagine y'all not being here. I didn't have a single clue how much I needed y'all until now. For James, thank you for all the life lessons you taught me and for being the best bonus dad ever. Your heart will finally be healed in heaven and neither of y'all will be in any pain anymore. Although that gives me so much comfort, your fight was not supposed to end there. And for my mother, everything we went through does not define what kind of person or what kind of mother you were. You were a beautiful, kind soul with so much gratitude and so gosh dang strong. And you taught me so many life lessons, and some that you just recently taught me through a letter you sent to James in 2018. When I first read it, I smiled and I cried, and I got chill bumps. But every single time I read it, it puts me to a lot of peace. So I thought I would share it. May 23rd, 2018. Deuteronomy 6:5. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. The wrong one will find you in peace and leave you in pieces, but the right one will find you in pieces and lead you to peace. We can't always choose the music the life plays for us, but you can choose how we dance to it. She was always dancing to her own beat, LOL. And keep in mind, she wrote that herself. Eventually, all the pieces fall into place, but until then, laugh at the confusion, live for the moment, and know that everything happens for a reason. I can choose to let it define me, confine me, refine me, outshine me, or I can choose to move on and leave it behind me. Always, Kristen Brock. Considering that gave me so much closure, I want to remember them for who they were and not what happened to them, and be happy for the time we got to spend together and not sad about the time that we don't. I may always and will always be her sunshine, but she will always be my star from up above. And I know at nighttime I can go and look at Mama and Jamie in the sky, and gladly they will save me a seat in heaven like they saved for you. I'm sorry. Gladly they will save a seat for me in heaven like they saved a seat for me in this very church. Although there's nothing we can do to bring it back, we still have control over how we treat people with us today. Therefore, when someone tries to tell you anything, no matter how important it could be, just listen, because you never know when it's somebody's time to go. You could say goodnight and wake up a few hours just to find out they aren't there, despite their joy and their love. So just listen, and never take a hug or anyone or anything for granted, and love with all they have in you like they did. And lastly, my take on not taking people for granted. I want to thank my family, also known as my cattle fam, my grandparents, my siblings, Jaylee, Johnny, Jaden, Jojo, Trent, Tristan, Ashley, and Jesse for helping me get through my worst nightmare. And last but not least, I want to thank Tasha, Bree, Nate, Lane, Kimberly Hayes, Kim Bowling, Katie, and most of all, my father, Angie, and Ben for making such a big difference. Jamie and Mama would have thanked y'all too. I love you guys, and so do they. I'm sorry.
The final words hung in the air, "I'm sorry," to a room full of mourners. It might have been interpreted as an expression of sorrow for the family's loss, but to an investigator's ear, it sounded entirely different. The speech was less of a tribute and more of a confused apology. It was filled with impersonal quotes and inside jokes that seemed out of place. It felt emotionally disconnected from the gravity of the moment. That final, quiet apology was the most alarming part. It wasn't, "I'm sorry this happened." It was just, "I'm sorry." Between the illogical claim about what she heard and a eulogy that felt more like a confession than a remembrance, the narrative Sarah Grace was projecting had completely unraveled. Investigators now had a primary focus. The question was, no longer if she knew more than she was saying, but how they could prove it. After the funeral, a quiet fell over the case, at least in the public eye. The social media chatter continued, and Sarah Grace's online persona as a grieving daughter remained the dominant narrative for many. To the outside world, it may have seemed like the investigation into the deaths of Kristen and James Brock had stalled, another tragic mystery destined to go cold. But behind the scenes, the opposite was true. The Carroll County Sheriff's Office, along with their state and federal partners, had entered the most critical phase of their investigation. This was the slow, painstaking work that doesn't make for dramatic television, the methodical accumulation of evidence, one piece at a time. For months, a dedicated team of investigators worked relentlessly. As a spokesperson for the sheriff's office would later state, the case consumed thousands of man-hours. They pursued every lead, no matter how small. They conducted countless interviews, speaking with family, friends, neighbors, and anyone who might have had insight into the family's life. They also began the arduous task of sifting through what they described as mountains of physical and digital evidence. The physical evidence from the house was sent to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation's crime lab and DOP, even private forensic laboratories, where every item was analyzed with cutting-edge technology. This is a process that takes time. Real justice, as the sheriff's office noted, is far more complex than a one-hour crime show. A significant portion of their focus was on the digital evidence. Every post Sarah made, every message she sent, every video she created was being cataloged and analyzed. Her very public campaign for justice on TikTok had inadvertently provided investigators with a treasure trove of data, offering a direct window into her communications and her state of mind. They were building a timeline, not just of the events of that February morning, but of the days and weeks that followed, looking for patterns, inconsistencies, and connections. They were determined to ensure that when a conclusion was reached, it would be based on an undeniable foundation of fact. Then, on July 8th, nearly 5 months after the 911 call, the quiet work erupted into public view. The case that many had been following online took a shocking and definitive turn. News outlets began reporting a stunning development.
Story we first brought you as breaking news on Good Day Atlanta this morning. Fox News' Kevin Stewart joins us live at the Carroll County Jail. And Kevin, we understand the daughter of one of the victims has been charged with the killings.
Yeah, that is the big shocker. The teen daughter is now in custody, charged with 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault. She is here at the county jail, being held without bond.
The news was a bombshell. Shortly after the initial reports, the Carroll County Sheriff's Office held a formal press conference to explain their actions to a stunned public. They laid out the scope of their investigation and officially announced the arrest of the very person who had been the public face of the victim's family.
So, as you all remember, I recognize many of you in this room that did come out on the scene that fateful day on February 20th. On the morning of February 20th, 2025, deputies with the Carroll County Sheriff's Office responded to a tragic scene at 1531 Carrollton Tyus Road. They discovered the bodies of James Brock, 45, and Kristen Brock, 41, both deceased from apparent gunshot wounds. From the very moment the 911 call was received, a relentless investigation began, one that would span months, consume thousands of man-hours, and require the full weight of the local and federal law enforcement agency partnerships. Today, we can confirm that an arrest has been made in the case. Kristen Brock's 17-year-old daughter, Sarah Grace Patrick, has been taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault in connection with the deaths of her mother and her stepfather. While the case has not remained in the public spotlight in recent months, the investigation has never gone silent. Led by investigator TJ Repetto, our team has pursued every lead, sifted through mountains of physical and digital evidence, conducted countless interviews, and collaborated with agencies such as the FBI, the GBI Crime Lab, and private forensic laboratories. In a world where television portrays crimes being solved in under an hour, the truth here is much more complex. Real justice takes time. Time to ensure that no detail is overlooked and no stone is not turned over. Sheriff Terry Langley, alongside Captain Guy Pope and Lieutenant Jackson Lawrence, has remained committed to ensuring that justice is served in this heartbreaking case. Their leadership, combined with the tireless dedication of our investigators, has brought us to this point today. We know the public has been eager for answers, and we want to be clear. So have we. But bringing forth the truth responsibly and thoroughly is our highest obligation. We are proud of the unwavering commitment shown by every member of the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, and we stand behind the process that has led us here today. Our prayers remain with the families of James and Kristen Brock, and especially with their young daughter who was home during this horrific crime. We also want to extend our heartfelt thanks to the community that has rallied for justice and has never given up hope. The pursuit of justice does not end today, however. It is very possible, because this remains an open and ongoing investigation, that more arrests and charges could be made. So with that, I will open this up to questions.
Has she been charged as an adult?
She has.
And any idea what her motive was that she gave a confession?
We are still working with her diligently. Our investigators have been speaking with her.
It is correct that she was the one who made that one call, correct?
Yes.
At what point did investigators begin to focus on her as the suspect?
So I believe in the beginning of any case, everyone's a suspect. I think I told many of you that when we were on scene that day. However, as an investigation continues and everything ebbs and flows, like I said in my press release, mountains of evidence has gotten us through here today. Lots of processing, lots of working with our law enforcement partners to get us to where we are today that honed in on her as a suspect.
Do you believe that she tried to cover this up in any way over the course of these months? You know, we've even seen some videos on social media of somebody saying, you know, I'm making this message on behalf of the daughter. Do you believe she tried to get people to cover up anything?
Considering that she didn't just immediately tell us what happened, yes. But who knows what's going on in a young person's mind like that. But she has been arrested and charged now, and we feel confident that she is responsible for their murders. But like I said, it is an open, ongoing investigation. It's very possible others are involved as well.
What was the key break in the case?
Just evidence, being able to go through evidence, being able to use private laboratories, being able to use GBI Crime Lab. You know, when you're processing stuff, like I said, it doesn't come back in an hour. So we've been filtering through, and there's still evidence left to process.
You noted the visual evidence. I assume that's text messages, emails. Was there some type of a trail that led you that way?
There's always a lot of evidence. I won't go into exactly what it is because it is an open, ongoing investigation, but we have mountains of evidence.
What about the social media or TikTok, that type of stuff? Any of that going to be used?
That will be up to the prosecuting attorney, and they'll work diligently with our investigators to make the case go forward towards trial or whatever they decide to do.
Is that the younger daughter, the youngest child that found them?
I believe that, and you speak to this, Kim, the smallest daughter found them that morning, correct? And then she came and told Sarah, and then Sarah made the 911 call.
Where was Sarah?
Sarah was in the home.
No, I mean, in the interim. Where was she staying? Who was she living with?
She's 17. She's kind of been out on her own.
Was she out on her own at the time?
No, she lived at home with her mother and stepfather at that time. But since then, she's lived with different family members and kind of moved all over the place.
Did she turn herself in?
Yes, she did turn herself in this morning.
Do you believe that any of the other family members knew about this?
Hard to tell. I can say this, that everybody that we have talked to through the course of the investigation that are family members have been nothing but cooperative. Anything else?
Did you do anything after the murder during the investigation that you guys will use in your
Like I said, we're still kind of putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, but I can tell you what led us here today, and that's the evidence that Sarah killed her parents.
Did she say why she turned herself in?
She turned herself in because we notified her she had warrants for her arrest.
Did you have any previous charges, any previous calls to that house regarding?
Not that I'm aware of, not regarding her, not that I'm aware of.
Did she seem remorseful?
I have not been personally with her or interviewed her, so I could not answer that question.
I know it's a shock to her family as well. Did you get any kind of, were they shocked? Well, surprisingly?
Like I said, her family's been very cooperative. I can't imagine as a parent making. Her father brought her up here this morning. She turned herself in. I can't imagine what he's going through. So my heart goes out to him as well.
You talked about the family. I know they've been trying their best to keep this in the forefront.
Yes.
I know you guys are working behind the scenes.
Yes.
I guess it takes, especially for a case this big, it takes a lot of time to make sure the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. And you
Yes.
speak to that because they've been seeming like on social media that they were frustrated, but it takes a lot.
Yeah, and we understand. I mean, if you don't work in the law enforcement field, like I said, CSI's kind of tainted us where, hey, something happens, it's done in an hour. This is not the case. I mean, and not only that, don't you want the right person arrested? So that's why it takes so long. These diligent investigators took their time. We've got the person that we believe orchestrated this and committed this horrific crime, and that was played through the part of evidence, and that's not something that's processed overnight.
Do you know where the weapon was obtained from?
I can't speak to that right now. Still investigation. Say that
The
again?
younger child, how old is she?
She is 6 years old now.
Do you have custody of her?
She's staying with family.
Can you speak to like just how he is this?
Oh, it's absolutely a shock to our community. Carroll County is a great community. We very rarely have stranger on stranger crime here, so I would like to say that we're not a dangerous community. I know that the Tice community that this happened in, those neighbors were really up in arms, as they should have been. Like I said, this has been a process to get us to where we're at today, but we don't know what goes through the mind of a child who wants to harm their parents. So that I can't answer right now, but it is a very horrific and sad case.
Was there any evidence of any type of, I don't want to say abuse, but challenges in the home?
Still an ongoing investigation.
And for anybody, who worked on this case, I don't know if there's ever been any other case like this in any of your careers, or if this is one of a few, but just when the facts, as you say, lead you to this conclusion, is it difficult, or what is that like just as a human, kind of when you follow the facts?
Anytime you work a case where somebody's life has been cut short, James is a special case because I believe, according to his family, he had a lot of heart trouble. He'd had numerous heart surgeries. I believe he may have been waiting on a heart transplant at some point. And to have his life cut short when he was given so many opportunities to live, to me, that's a big takeaway from this story. And that a mother and a stepfather will never be able to raise their children and the little girl that was in the home. To me, she's probably the saddest victim in all of this.
You did mention she didn't turn herself in. You said she was turned in with her father.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm. All right.
The arrest of Sarah Grace Patrick wasn't a sudden development based on a single clue. It was the culmination of a deliberate, methodical, and evidence-driven investigation. The mountains of evidence had finally led them to a single suspect. But for the community, her family, and the thousands who had followed her story online, the real shock was just beginning to set in. The case was no longer a mystery about an unknown intruder. It was now a deeply unsettling story about a family, and it had just been turned completely inside out. The announcement of Sarah Grace Patrick's arrest sent a shockwave far beyond the walls of the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. In town, neighbors who knew the Brocks struggled to comprehend the news. Online, the thousands of followers who had offered their prayers and support were left stunned and confused. The narrative that Sarah herself had so carefully constructed, that of a grieving daughter desperate for justice for her murdered parents, had been completely upended. Now, everyone who thought they knew the story was forced to re-examine everything they had seen and heard. The central question was no longer who did this, but how is this possible? This profound sense of disbelief was felt most acutely by those closest to Sarah. Her own family, already grappling with the loss of Kristen and James, was now faced with an accusation that seemed unthinkable. Shortly after the arrest, Sarah's grandfather, Dennis Nolan, Kristen Brock's own father, spoke to the media. His televised interview became a powerful public statement of doubt, directly challenging the official narrative presented by law enforcement.
Joining us now is Sarah Patrick's grandfather and Kristen Brock's dad, Dennis Nolan. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. I can't imagine what you and your family are going through. First question, what was your reaction to Sarah's arrest this week?
Well,
very surprised. I mean, I've been talking to the detectives since it happened, had no indication that they were looking at Sarah as a suspect, no less any evidence that said she did it. So I was shocked.
Do you believe she's the one who did this?
No. I think, to sum it up, really, the detectives, the best they could tell me was the evidence says that she's the only one who could possibly have done it. That says to me that there's no real evidence that says she did do it.
We hear that there's a mountain of evidence, but they haven't really said, but their term was mountain of evidence. What did they tell you beyond just she's the only one who possibly could have done it? What did they share with you about why they believe she's the one who is responsible for this?
Well, they never did share anything that said she was responsible, other than the fact that she's the only one, the evidence says she's the only one who could possibly have done it. Of course, they haven't revealed any of the evidence, because it's an ongoing investigation, and I understand that. But I know they were pressured to make an arrest, and I think this might have been premature. I don't think they needed to wait till the investigation was over. Sarah certainly wasn't going anywhere, but you know, she's taking it very hard. She swears by her innocence.
Have you spoken with her since her arrest?
Yes, she called me from the jail the day after, of course, pleading for me to help her get out, and she was just very upset, saying, "Please help me." And there's not much I can do at this point. I don't know what else to say. I mean, she's always been a good kid. I've always liked Sarah. She was always very friendly, and she never really asked for anything. She was a very, to me, she was just an ideal child. She had just graduated from high school. She was very proud of that. She was working 2 jobs. She was doing very well, and I don't understand what could have ever, if she did do this, what triggered it.
If you, during that phone call, asked her if she had done it, what did she say?
I didn't ask her because it was just assumed she didn't do it. I wasn't going to accuse her of doing it. I just advised her to cooperate with the authorities, and we, wait and see, and hopefully get her through this.
And she maintained her innocence on that phone call. She said she's not the person.
She said, "I didn't do it." She said, "Why are they doing this to me?"
And I'm sorry to go back to February 20th, because I know you lost your daughter and your son-in-law. But what did Sarah tell you about that night in conversations that you had?
Just that Jaylee, her daughter, went in to wake them up. She came back and Jaylee said she couldn't wake them up, and Sarah went in and found them, deceased. And she called 911, and that's all she said. She's never gone beyond that.
I know this is kind of a difficult question, but law enforcement said that they found it suspicious that Sarah would not have heard gunshots in that home. And that was something that in the beginning started, I guess, it was a red flag for them. And that a 5-year-old would go in and potentially hear gunshots. And I know James had a heart machine, but then Sarah would not. And that they found suspicious. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't know. The house was very unusual, and her bedroom wasn't next to theirs, but Sarah claimed that the TVs were on. I know they were on in both rooms, and I don't know. It did seem unusual to me that she didn't hear the gunshots, but at 1:30 in the morning, she was asleep. I know I'm such a solid sleeper, that it possibly could have happened to me and not hurt it.
What was her relationship with James and Kristen?
It was good. It was very good. She was here Thanksgiving with them, and we had a good time. Everybody was happy, and it was good conversation. There was no trouble, and my conversations with Kristen, right up to that night, she never mentioned anything about problems with Sarah, which she would have done. Kristen and I were very close. She was the daddy's girl.
Did Sarah know how to fire a gun?
I'm sure she did, yeah.
And this is Georgia. I mean, many people grow up handling firearms. Did she grow up around guns? Were there guns in the house?
There were times they were here. I live out in the county, and we've taken, some of my guns and fired them off my deck and so forth. And I believe Sarah protected some of that at times. Her brothers were more interested in it. But yeah, no, I wouldn't say she grew up with guns, no.
At the funeral, and the spokesperson for the Carroll County Sheriff said that this was something that stood out to her, that in Sarah's speech at the funeral, she said sorry at the end of her speech. And I guess investigators, that was another red flag for them. What do you make of that being a red flag to the people now accusing her of murder?
I'm sorry. She wrote that speech, and I can't speak for her for that. It didn't even occur. That never occurred to me. I'm sure she was sorry it all happened. I am sorry it happened. Using the word sorry, I don't think is any admission of guilt. I think that's a little exaggerated.
The grandfather's words painted a picture of a sweet, responsible young woman who was being railroaded by a pressured police force. And that image was echoed by the people who saw Sarah every day, her friends and classmates. In the hallways of their high school and on social media, those who knew her as a peer, not a suspect, began to speak out. Their accounts added another layer of complexity to the unfolding mystery.
Here's a few things about Sarah that would shock you for her to even do this, and this is why we didn't suspect anything about it. Going to school with her and being her friend, she was super sweet. She always wanted to be friends with people. As someone else said, when they were telling us about them being friends, she would always give notes to people that were crying. She'd always come up to you. She'd always give you food. She just wanted to be liked, and that's why it was so surprising to us that she would even do this.
This portrait of a gentle, empathetic girl, someone who wrote notes to crying classmates, was impossible to reconcile with the charges she now faced. But perhaps the most surreal perspective came from the online community that Sarah had so actively courted. The TikTok creators she had messaged, pleading for them to cover her parents' case, were now in a bizarre position. They had been enlisted to help find a killer, only to discover their primary source was now the primary suspect. One creator, who goes by the handle allegedly, reportedly, captured this sense of digital whiplash perfectly.
Much more information is going to come out. I will be making another video about this. I just wanted to get this out. I am in absolute shock because, again, the question I asked at the beginning of this video, why would you message me or any other true crime creator saying, hey, please cover this case, and then you wind up being arrested for it?
His question hung in the digital air, echoing the confusion of thousands. A family was in denial, a group of friends was in shock, and an online community felt a chilling sense of betrayal. The arrest had provided an official answer from law enforcement, but for everyone else, it had only created a profound and disturbing conflict. How could Sarah Grace Patrick be both the kind, loving daughter described by her family and friends, and the person investigators were confident was responsible for this devastating act? The two realities simply could not coexist, and the community was left to wonder which version of Sarah was the truth. The arrest of Sarah Grace Patrick was a definitive moment in the investigation, but it was far from the final chapter of the story. While the charges provided an answer to the immediate question of who, they opened up a host of deeper, more complex questions that resonated through the community and the ongoing legal process. At the press conference, investigators made it clear that their work was not finished. Their statements suggested the puzzle might be even larger and more complicated than anyone had imagined. This left the door open to the possibility that Sarah was not the only one involved. This possibility was amplified when a reporter at a later media availability pressed for details on whether more arrests could be coming. The official response was cautious but incredibly telling.
There's one other thing that I found interesting. You said more arrests could be possible. Can you elaborate a little on that?
So what we believe is through, interviews that we have had with Sarah, her father has been present during those as well. Different information that we've gotten throughout the course of the investigation, and now that she's in custody, could possibly lead to other individuals that may have been a part of this. So that is what we're following now, are those leads and seeing where that takes us. But we're not ruling it out.
When you say a part of this, do you mean a part of the actual killings, a part of the, accessory after the fact, harboring, or what?
Well, it's
what
hard
are you
to
thinking?
tell. It's hard to tell, but I can tell you that we're looking at a couple of different aspects that someone could have been involved or had knowledge, and we won't know all those facts until we continue to work this case. It remains a very active and fluid case, and just because we made an arrest doesn't mean we don't still have a lot of work to do.
The mention of Sarah's biological father being present during interviews, and the specific reference to looking at individuals who may have had knowledge, sent a new ripple of speculation through the case. Was there a co-conspirator? Did someone help after the fact? The suggestion of a wider circle of involvement only deepened the mystery and added another layer of tragedy to the family's story. As the legal proceedings begin their slow march forward, the case of Sarah Grace Patrick forces us to look beyond the shocking headlines. It becomes a mirror, reflecting some of the most pressing and difficult questions of our time. It is a story that pushes past the simple facts of an investigation and into the murky territory of the modern human condition. How do we reconcile the public persona someone projects on social media with their private reality? Sarah's prolific TikTok presence, once seen as a daughter's cry for help, is now viewed through a much darker lens, a potential tool for misdirection in a world where online validation can become a powerful and sometimes dangerous motivator. Furthermore, the case forces a difficult conversation about the hidden pressures within families. The Brocks appeared to be a happy, well-adjusted, blended family. Yet, this tragedy suggests a profound disconnect lurking beneath the surface. It raises systemic questions about adolescent mental health, the invisible struggles teenagers face, and the catastrophic moments when communication and support systems fail. The sheriff's spokesperson, in a moment of unguarded honesty, touched upon this very point. We don't know what goes through the mind of a child who wants to harm their parents. That admission speaks to a larger societal challenge, understanding the complex inner lives of young people in an age of unprecedented digital and social pressure. This story is no longer just about what happened one night in Carroll County. It's about the systems that are meant to protect us, family, community, and even the digital spaces we inhabit. It asks us, as a society, to consider how these systems can fail and what happens when a child becomes so isolated or distressed that they become invisible, even to those closest to them. What warning signs are we all missing? In your view, what is the most critical systemic change that could help prevent a similar tragedy from happening again? Share your analysis in the comments below. This is an ongoing case, and as more information comes to light, we will continue to follow the pursuit of justice for Kristen and James Brock.